Minister of Domestic Security Yann Lafrenière is ordering an administrative investigation into the Longueuil police's handling of the shooting of Nooran Rezayi, a 15-year-old boy who was killed by Longueuil police last September. Longueuil police did not immediately notify Quebec's police watchdog, the BEI, like they're supposed to after a civilian is killed. It took them over an hour and a half. The investigation will examine whether Longueuil police respected their legal and regulatory obligations and why there were these alleged failures, according to Longueuil Mayor Catherine Fournier. Police were responding to a 911 call reporting a group of teenagers armed with metal baseball bats, pepper spray, and a gun. The BEI confirmed that Nooran and his friends weren't in possession of firearms, just one baseball bat. Tout le monde en parle featured reporter Pascal Rabida, who claimed the 911 transcription revealed that almost a full minute elapsed before they shot Nooran.
À partir de l'arrivée du premier duo de policiers, la première voiture patrouille, il s'écoule 58 secondes précisément avant que les coups de feu retentissent et que Nooran Rezayi meurt.
However, surveillance footage shows police actually shot Nooran less than 10 seconds after arriving on the scene. Radio-Canada's initial reporting on the incident still states the false timeline broadcast on Quebec's biggest talk show, but CBC's article published June 1st about the upcoming investigation says that less than 10 seconds elapsed. This latest administrative investigation is different from the investigation into the shooting itself. The BEI submitted its report on the shooting to Quebec's Public Prosecution Office, the Directeur des Poursuites Criminelles et Pénales, which will decide whether or not to charge the officer in question with a crime.
I think a big part of like the police and justice is that people have to see justice being done. They have to trust that what they're getting is the right, accurate information. They have to trust that things were done the right way. That 90 minutes between the shooting and when police choose to call the investigators, to me is a giant gap in that trust, right? What happened in those 90 minutes? Why did they need 90 minutes? And I think that is going to probably be central to like any kind of deconstruction of what the police did there. It reminds me a lot of the Freddie Villanueva shooting in 2008 when the two officers involved in the shooting were allowed to get their story straight before they were interviewed. That's a huge breach of protocol. How critical are these, or what they may seem like administrative details, but how critical are these in the public's understanding of the shooting?
Well, it's the kind of thing where they're supposed to notify them right away so that everything's still fresh. If there's any evidence on the scene, they can see right away. Like if these kids actually had a gun, you know, and then there could be an argument if there's this 90 minutes, oh, well, they got rid of it. Like, right? Like there's like all these different ways that the truth could be manipulated. And it's also, it makes it seem like it wasn't a priority for them. Also, that's like huge, right? The police know that in order to get, like if a crime happens, the faster you get there, the more accurate all the evidence, all the testimonies, the crime scene is going, the more intact the crime scene is going to be. They know that. So when you're calling the independent investigator, because you're like, I killed a kid, you know that in order for the report to be as accurate as possible, they need to get there right away. So it just shows some hypocrisy, and it shows, you know, we have this independent watchdog that's supposed to hold police to account, and it's supposed to be this thing to maintain public trust. But then if police aren't, you know, doing what they're supposed to, how is that watchdog supposed to do its job, right?
Well, yeah. The other thing that kind of comes into this conversation is that 58 seconds.
Yeah.
When Pascal Rabida, who is like the beat cop reporter at Radio-Canada, goes on Tout le monde en parle, which is the biggest talk show in Quebec politics, and that's what everybody watches. It's called Everyone's Talking About It, right? When you go on and you repeat like this, like he said 58 seconds had elapsed. Yeah. That gives you the idea, I think, of a situation where the police get out of their car and there's a minute of like, put it down, kid, put it down, kid. But then when you see the security footage, it's 10 seconds.
Yeah.
There's no, it doesn't seem like there's any dialogue. It's just they get out and they shoot.
Immediately.
And most people probably don't have that second part. They probably saw the clip on the talk show. They heard the 58 seconds. They said, well, it's kind of complicated.
Or they read that Radio Canada article as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is like reporters make mistakes. Also, I believe that he, like, if he's trusting if he's going off of the 911 transcript where you're sort of like, there's, that they transcribe when on the phone you could hear these gunshots or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, reporters, sometimes that might have been accurate for the information that he had. And then this surveillance footage came out a bit later. And there was no retraction. There's no retraction on the Radio Canada website. There's no retraction on on the article. There's no correction or anything on the Tout le monde en parle
website. The nothing.
I just looked at both of these things today, and then it's like, it's not like the network doesn't know. Like, not that CBC and Radio Canada, they have different reporters, but it's like, this is the same outlet, and the exact same outlet, CBC,
Two different versions of the truth.
Published, like, when they were talking about the administrative thing, they were like, yeah, this 10 seconds, because I was independently verifying the 10 seconds that elapsed is in the litigation, the lawsuit Nooran's family is filing. So obviously I went and, saw the surveillance footage and saw what was in CBC and stuff. And it's crazy. Like, in the surveillance footage, you hear the cop car screech to a halt, and then almost immediately after you hear gunshots. And none of the kids on the scene had a gun. So it was police firearms. There's no denying that, and it's really irresponsible to not issue a correction on the website.
As far as we know, what happened?
Yeah, so there was this long 911 call that police were responding to where a neighbor was like, there's these teens, they're, dressed in dark clothing, some of them, although, and like some of them have masks on, they have all these baseball bats, they have pepper spray, they have a gun. So police show up on the scene and they essentially start shooting, kids scatter. No one has a gun in this situation, except for the police. And then the cops are trying to, wrangle these kids, see what's going on. And it takes 5 minutes for police to start administering life-saving resuscitation or whatever, to start trying to resuscitate Nooran after he was shot. 5 minutes.
That's dark.
It takes 5 minutes. And there's the argument like, oh, we thought there was guns on the scene. We had to, but that's how long it took. So that's what happened.
So there has been this push. So, in the chief of police in Montreal.
Yeah.
Fatty Dagger. He was the chief of police for the Longueuil police.
Yeah.
And in 2021, when he left, they instituted this program of community policing called Rezayi.
Yeah.
They got $3.6 million from the provincial government. And the idea is that police officers will visit community organizations with their badge, but without the gun, to try to build ties with the community and to, I guess, just be better police. At the same time, the police all over Quebec launch an anti-gang task force or an anti-gang program, anti-guns program. They don't get $3.6 million. They get $74 million. So can you talk a little bit about the sort of imbalance between, hey, we want to be a friendlier kind of cop, but also, we're going to pour a ton of money into this anti-gun thing. And what does the anti-gun initiative do in a practical sense?
Yeah, well, there is an arms trafficking problem in Canada. That is true. Like, we know this. We talked about it earlier with Ganesatage. Like, people are getting guns and using them in a bad way. However, this program was launched in, I think, 2021, and it was like on the heels of like the height of the big Black Lives Matter protests that were happening in 2020.
The Rezayi community policing program? Or
yes,
the guns
both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
They were launched simultaneously. So a lot of people were lauding the Longueuil police for this like progressive approach. They're like, whoa, this is so cool. But at the same time, they were increasing the amount of street checks where police just randomly go up to people and are like, you know, just ask them questions. You can walk away, by the way, during a street check. But
most people don't know that. You're scared.
You can walk
right?
away. But anyway, so where they just go up to people and they start asking them questions. Sometimes they frisk them, like, you know, with no
probable cause.
No probable cause. Like, it's so yeah, it's supposed to be preventative. During this time where they were increasing the street checks, Arab people were 1.7 more times likely than white people to get street checked. Black people were twice as likely to get street checked.
Yeah.
So they're doing this thing where they're trying to connect with people, but then it's also at the same time they're increasing surveillance on these people.
Yeah.
And randomized surveillance.
And there's a lot more money, energy, and attention going into the surveillance.
They've increased the police presence.
Yeah.
And then you see what happens with this shooting where it's, you know, you have a bunch of kids of color hanging out and the response is shoot first, ask questions later. That was their response. There's like kind of no denying that. And who this 911 caller is, what their motives were. Like, I believe that they saw a bunch of teens hanging out together. Maybe they saw the baseball bat and maybe they thought they saw something else.
You jump to conclusions.
But you jump to conclusions because these kids are brown and black, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of the impression that people are getting.
Yeah.
So all of this alleged trust building that happened is kind of like...
down the toilet.
It's a little bit down the toilet because even if there are some officers who made genuine connections with people, even if there are some officers who were like, you know, really into it and like we're talking to community members, it doesn't change the fact that you have police who got on the scene and did this and took 90 minutes to call the BEI. Every cop on the scene was complicit in that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if that is how police are allowed to operate, even the quote unquote good ones, it cancels it out because you don't know who you're going to get. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like in Ted Rutland's piece for the Rover, he wrote about that last fall. He sort of gets more into the erosion of trust. And like I said before, Nooran's family is also suing the Longueuil police service because they're like, you showed up and killed my kid.
They took the kid will never come home.
The kid will never come home. Yeah. And he wasn't even wearing the same colored clothing as the kid who allegedly had a gun. Yeah. Like,
he was just a kid who happens to be not white.
Yeah.
Sitting on the wrong street corner when the cops arrived and opened fire.
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
This reminds me of the Freddie Villanueva shooting. In 2008, this 18-year-old unarmed kid was hanging out with his brother. His brother had, at the time, a criminal record or some kind of involvement, but it was minor. Mm-hmm. They were playing a dice game in the parking lot of an arena, and the police used this justification to approach them, that dice games are illegal. We later found out that no cop had ever used this bylaw, this like anti-dice games bylaw. They were just approached a bunch of black kids and kids of color. The situation devolved. They got into a struggle with one of the kids. Cops claimed their lives were in danger. None of the kids were armed. And Freddie Villanueva, who was unarmed and by all accounts a great kid, was shot a bunch of times and died. And one of the major problems there, beyond the loss of life, of course, is that the cops were allowed, the two officers at the scene were not immediately separated. You're supposed to separate them right away so that you can get the most accurate version of events. So that, you know, if there are contradictions in their stories, then you realize, okay, well, something has gone wrong. And what ended up happening is there was a public coroner's inquest into the death of Freddie Villanueva. We found out all kinds of shitty things that happened with the cops and people of color in Montreal North. And it was so bad that the province created this thing called the BEI, the Bureau des Enquêtes Indépendantes, which is supposed to police the police. And what we found since then is, well, it hasn't really done its job, unless you believe that every single police shooting over the last 10, 11 years has been clean. because in all of these cases, the BEI officers were cleared. Or sorry, the police officers were cleared by the BEI. There have been dozens of shootings, and each of them was apparently clean. And I think, you know, the cops can be great, but no one's perfect. And when you look at it that way and you think, okay, well, there was all this reform almost 20 years ago, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
And it's still happening to the same kids, the same kinds of kids. Then I think we have to ask ourselves larger questions about, you know, do we really need just a kinder, gentler machine gun hand, or do we need a new way of doing this policing
Well, and
thing?
it's also like, if you're a doctor and you are negligent with a patient and they lose their life, you could lose your medical license. But those kinds of rules don't seem to apply to police. Like right now, the officers who were involved or who were on the scene of that shooting are still working. They're still like, it's still happening. They're still doing their job. They're still interacting with these people, with this community. And right now, so the BEI has written up its report that they have given to the DPCP. So there will be likely, and then the DPCP decides if there's going to be a trial, and then the trial happens. So even like in the meantime, the police are still actively on duty, right? Like there's no... They're still out in the field.
Business as usual.
It's business as usual. And then down the line, we'll find out, like, after, like, months and months, then we'll find out if this officer is getting criminally charged or not, and what's going to happen if they're still going to be allowed to police, right? And it's, you gotta question, like I said, any other profession that is, like, a profession agrégée, or you have, like, an official certification, if you are negligent or actively do harm on the job, you can no longer do that job anymore in a lot of cases. It just doesn't seem to apply to police. So I think that's a huge reason why there's a huge erosion of public trust, especially in Nogai right now.
Well, thanks for bringing this up, and we're going to keep our eye on it.